Hi guys, Office Bloke Dave here. I hope everyone is enjoying their days today, or nights, or mornings, or whatever time it is, wherever you are watching it. It is the evening for me, and that's why there's a gigantic glass of wine. 19 Crimes has become one of my favourite wine brands, by the way. If they're out there and they want to sponsor me, feel free. Feel free. I'm going to do 10 musicians who surprisingly didn't die from drugs. Which there's some people out there that have just like the 70s and the 80s rock stars, just they have no business being alive. You look at people like Lemmy, who was on a bottle of Jack Daniels a day at one point, if the law is correct, and apparently couldn't get a blood transfusion with normal blood if he needed one because it just would have killed him. It's crazy. It's a different level of partying. And when people say they party nowadays, I think about these guys from way back then. And none of us know what we're talking about compared to them. But anyway, before we get into it, just do me a favour, make sure you're subscribed. It does mean the absolute world to me. I'm trying my hardest to get another one of them. Subscriptions have gone up significantly since Ash has been on the channel. For that reason, I'm going to rope her into doing loads more reactions, don't worry. And let me know in the comment section if you miss her being on reactions when it's just me. Feel free to give me shit for that, but we don't live together. If we lived together, I'd be roping her into like 2 a day, every day. But we don't, so that's the way it is. One day. Right then, 10 musicians who surprisingly didn't die from drugs. That's not how you do it. There you go. Let's do it.
Are you grateful and surprised that you're still alive?
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're looking at 10 musicians who surprisingly didn't die from drugs.
Who would have guessed the volatile Keith Richards would even be alive today?
For this list, we'll be looking at artists who struggled with the use of substances. Did we forget a performer that grappled with substance use disorders? Let us...
Obviously, Ozzy Osbourne and the Rolling Stones are going to be on there. I don't think it was drugs with Lemmy necessarily. I think there was a lot of drugs involved at one point, but I think he was like boozed towards the end, wasn't he? I've heard him tell stories about drugs, and I think wasn't like speed a big factor at one point? I don't know, but I'm not sure who else would be on this list. A lot of the ones that should have died from drugs did die from drugs, so I'm kind of racking my brains a little bit.
Know in the comments below. Slash rocked his way into the late 1980s as a lead guitarist for Guns N' Roses. While his shredding was contributing to the band's domination, he was also struggling with addictive habits. The guitarist dabbled in a variety of substances during the heyday of his music career.
You're the only guy I know who's actually really charming about flatlining 3 times in your life.
Well, you know, I mean, the fact that when you have a chance to sort of laugh about it, yeah. It's better to laugh about it than anything else.
Phil Anselmo OD'd on heroin, or allegedly, or you know, something. But either way, he flatlined and nearly died. I wonder if he's on the list. And fuck, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the Jerry Cantrell. I wonder if Jerry Cantrell will be on here.
During an interview, Slash recounted a time where he was pronounced clinically dead during a particularly bad binge. All of his days of partying led to him being diagnosed with cardiomyopathy in 2001. The sometimes fatal condition motivated the musician to become healthier and eventually get sober years later.
Because I don't have any regrets about that period, and I'm not what you call a sobriety flag waver, because I'm sober out of necessity more than anything. I loved a lot of I used to do, but it got to a point where it wasn't fun anymore.
Corey Taylor. While Corey Taylor is known today for fronting the bands Slipknot and Stone Sour, he almost never made it to stardom in the first place.
Another tune.
Before he reached adulthood, he was using substances frequently. Taylor had multiple overdoses at a young age. In one of his worst incidents, he was reportedly tossed into a dumpster after his friends thought he died.
What I think happened was they thought I was dead. And you can't call them friends, really.
No,
I mean, it was... So that was like the defining moment for me.
After Taylor survived that close call, his career took off. He started heavily relying on alcohol until he heard about a bandmate who may have died from an overdose.
How did his death affect the group?
It was very dark. was very, very heavy. The day we found out, we were all sitting in my house, and the only thing I can describe it is like this dense numbness.
Since 2010, Taylor has made a conscious effort to stay sober. Eminem. During the time he was on top of the world as a hugely successful hip-hop artist, Eminem worked through his own addictions behind the scenes. He found himself trapped in a bad cycle in the early 2000s.
I never meant to make you cry, but tonight I'm cleaning out my closet.
Additionally, the death of his friend Proof affected him so much that he sank further into the habit. In 2007, Eminem had a near-fatal overdose that made it clear to him that something needed to change.
If I didn't admit that I was weak with this certain thing, I was gonna die, you know, so.
How close did you come?
I certainly probably a couple hours away from death.
After going to rehab and working on his health, the rapper released music in 2009. His album Relapse took a look at the effect drugs had on his life. The MC wasn't afraid to explore both the darkest moments of his fame and his eventual recovery through song.
You get in my way, I'ma feed you to the monster. I'm normal during the day, but at night turn to a monster.
John Frusciante.
I know that Eminem had his struggles, and I think there was the pain pills in there or something. I don't think he was ever on Rolling Stones levels, and I could be wrong about that, but I think probably partying and taking too many drugs versus like habitual 2-3 decades worth of just nothing but drugs is a bit different. He doesn't seem like a guy who was on the operating table, if you know, and I could be wrong, I could be absolutely wrong, but it seems like he just had a drug problem and went sober, which I'm sure not the vast majority, but I'm sure a ridiculous percentage of musicians go through, especially touring musicians.
Guitarist John Frusciante joined Red Hot Chili Peppers after the member Hillel Slovak died from an overdose. He also participated in the drug scene in the late 90s.
Whoa there, look at those eyes. That's a guy that's on some things.
1980s and early 1990s.
That feeling and that image is just the whole reason I got into rock and roll in the first place. Like, bisexuality and drugs were the two things in life that I related to rock and roll.
Things got worse for him in the years after he left the band. In one scary occasion, Frusciante began using drugs shortly after a severe overdose that required a blood transfusion to recover from. He eventually reached a point where he decided the best path forward for him was rehab.
Once I got myself together again, and once I started really getting on a new path in life, and once I stopped regretting things and things like that, I really, my life started moving forward.
Fortunately, Red Hot Chili Peppers bandmate Flea advocated for Frusciante to return to the group. His reunion with them helped kick off a new phase of his life away from substance use. Steven Tyler, the lead singer of Aerosmith.
I should have known Steven Tyler would be on the list, to be fair. I just couldn't think. I think I've always been of the thing from quite young. Like, I come from drinkers and sort of drinking stock, which is a weird thing to say out loud, but like, there's a lot of Irish and Scottish in my family, and it's not uncommon to be able to go out and drink like 12 to 14 pints on a sort of day session. But I've been very conscious since being young of, long before I had kids, I never wanted to take it too far to the point where I wouldn't be able to have a beer with my kids on their 18th birthdays. And that stuck with me since I was about 18. And a lot of these guys, they've gone too far, and that's it for them. It's got to be nothing. Whereas, like, if you, anything in moderation, and I'm not advocating for going out there taking drugs and things like that, but anything in moderation, if it can be kept in moderation, can be handled to a degree for most people. It's when things go too far, and it's when people are like that. When you saw John Frusciante's eyes, you know, he was absolutely messed up there. Yeah, it's bad.
Smith maintained his fair share of problems with drinking and drugs. He even went so far as to claim that he spent millions of dollars on just one type of substance alone.
Have you made a lot of money in your day?
Yeah, millions.
You have?
Oh yeah.
Where is it now?
Went up my nose.
During the band's first period of success in the 1970s, his drug habits almost brought the band to a grinding halt.
How close has the band been to exploding?
Well, 3 times, 18 times, many times.
Many times.
Yeah.
And what was the cause? What dynamic broke down?
Oh, you can name anything.
His bandmates even pushed for an intervention to curtail Tyler's habits. Although he did take their advice, he still had trouble staying sober throughout the decades. At the same time, Tyler struggled with foot pain and a hepatitis C diagnosis. The musician also dealt with a relapse in 2002. While Tyler's journey hasn't been easy, the prolific vocalist keeps pushing for a healthier lifestyle. Ozzy Osbourne. Throughout Ozzy Osbourne's musical career, he had substantial issues with drugs. His constant substance use was one of the main reasons that he was let go from his Sabbath gig. After that setback drove him to develop even unhealthier habits, he kicked off a solo career. But striking out on his own still didn't help him automatically kick his habits. The constant attention from the cameras on his family reality show, The Osbournes, also caused him to use more substances.
Well, you always remember as a performer your first public appearance. My first public appearance was a fire station in Birmingham, England, and there was 3 firemen and a janitor there in the audience, and I was like...
In 2006, Osbourne started to commit to sobriety. Although he had a few relapses since that time, he worked with his family to get and stay clean once more.
Ozzy is patient number 9. You have the 9 lives of a cat, don't you?
He's got more than that, let me tell you.
I mean, I should have been dead a long time ago.
Stevie Nicks.
I do think that quad bike accident sped up his decline significantly. I think that's when he started using the cane and stuff, wasn't it? Like then, I don't know what the extent of his injuries were, but he was in a bad way, wasn't he? I think they thought he was going to die at one point. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not advocating for any sort of behaviours. I'm not going to tell people how to live their lives. But would Black Sabbath have ever been Black Sabbath without the levels of substance abuse that were happening? And see how many bands that try and keep up that level of musicianship, that level of like creative songwriting when they all go sober, and how many bands just fizzle into obscurity. This is the sad truth of it. I think people need to do what's best for them and their own personal health, and everything else, the music should come secondary. But fucking hell, good music comes from people that aren't sober. It really does. Jimi Hendrix, if he was sober.
During her time in Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks dealt with substance use disorder and a turbulent relate. The habit of using one substance in the 1980s, she fell into another. The drug Klonopin started as a way for her to kick one drug.
Nobody ever told us they were bad. I swear, nobody ever told us they were bad.
However, Nicks became too reliant on the thing that was supposed to be helping her cope with addictive behavior. She spent nearly a decade struggling to get away from Klonopin. After a lengthy detox, Nicks returned to music once more. While it took a while for her to start feeling confident in her work, she came out on the other end of the 1990s as an enthusiastic and lauded performer.
You can also turn around and say, what else would I do? You know, there's nothing else that I love that much, so what else would I do but perform for people and watch people grow, you know, watch the world grow.
Elton John.
Elton John, wait a minute. I've never heard of Klonopin. Someone's going to let me know in the comment section what that is. And also, they're being very careful not to name the drugs that people were addicted to here. I don't know if they're worried about it being litigious, or maybe for algorithm reasons they don't want to say the word of these things, the name of these things. Elton John, I don't know if anyone remembers, but when they did it was the COVID, it was like a worldwide concert where everyone performed from home, and it was broadcast across the world, and there was like Eddie Vedder was on it playing an organ, and it was bizarre. Elton John was on there, sat in his garden playing the piano, singing. He was absolutely off his tits for that, and that was 2 years ago. Maybe he was like, see if you can find it on YouTube after you watch this. He was definitely under the influence at that point.
Elton John might be the most famous singer-songwriter to come out of the late 1960s and early 1970s. He also dealt with his fair share of drug and alcohol use in his life. Throughout the 70s, he took in numerous substances. And in 1975, the musician purposely overdosed in an attempt to end his life. Medical professionals were able to save him in time and start him on a road to recovery.
I didn't confront the real problem in my life, that I was a drug addict. I thought getting married would change all the unhappiness that the drug addiction brought me.
After years of struggling, John got sober in 1990. He soon had a professional renaissance in the following decade that included work on The Lion King. Following that huge career boost, he then focused his efforts on charitable causes and furthering his legacy. Nikki Sixx.
Watch that performance from 2 years ago and then comment if he's stuck to that. It's maybe I'm wrong. I'm always open to being wrong. I'm wrong very often over at the Office Blokes, and I hold my hands up whenever I'm wrong and just go, yeah, they got it wrong. But I think he may have had a very recent relapse.
Along with his band Motley Crue, Nikki Sixx became notorious for his partying in the heavy metal era. He is as famous for being a bassist as he is for his misadventures with drugs. Sixx's most infamous episode came when an overdose rendered him legally dead until he was revived minutes later. That incident happened to be part of a relatively long list of overdoses.
Slash's girlfriend brings you to the emergency room. You didn't know this. You wake up and you say there could be life after death because you saw the whole thing. You said you were. They said you were technically dead?
Years after he hit a low, he recounted his struggles within an autobiography called The Heroin Diaries. The musician luckily sought treatment and managed to survive one of the deadliest stories in rock history.
Something happened, and that was really when I said, I gotta clean up, and this is like out of control.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to...
He looks good, to be fair, for someone who's been a heroin addict and stuff, but yeah, I wonder if there's an element of rock star privilege. Like, there's a lot of people who, if they were just some random guy off the street and you'd overdosed in the same sort of way, you wouldn't be around to tell the tale at this point. And when it's like, oh no, he's from this gigantic heavy metal band at the time, he needs to be saved. I wonder if there's just an extra element of a couple more minutes spent, a few more things pumped into him just to try and save his life. I'm not accusing anyone, I don't know, I'm just fully speculating on that. Seems to be a lot of rock stars with overdose, clinically dead stories that are still here to tell the tale.
To our channel and ring the bell.
To be fair, there's a lot that aren't as well, so
to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Keith Richards. Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones has a reputation for his long history of substance use. In fact, many people have expressed amazement that he survived so many encounters with drugs. The musician was also arrested for possession numerous times throughout the years. Although Richards avoided significant jail time, he had to go to a treatment program after an arrest in Canada.
In the event, he was given a suspended sentence, told to continue his treatment to cure heroin addiction, and ordered to perform a concert for the blind.
At one point, he was
ordered to perform a concert for the blind as part of his punishment from the courts. Eh? Is that a thing? I'm all for it. My eyesight is absolute dog shit. If I didn't have my contact lenses in, I couldn't see that camera, which is there. I'd have no chance. So I sympathise. It's a great cause. It's a worthy cause. But I didn't know the courts could do that.
Accidentally poisoned by a pesticide while taking another drug. He even snorted his father's ashes after mixing them with another substance. While Richards has significantly cut back his use in recent years, doctors and the musician himself are still amazed at his tolerance.
You said at one point that part of the reason that you took drugs was to hide.
Yeah, it's to get away from the flim-flam, from all of the unnecessary things about show business that seem to be important to show business people.
fair play. I can see why a lot of the ridiculously famous people do it. It's escapism, and especially if you've got some sort of friendly dealer that's coming over to you, and you have a working relationship, and you can get whatever you want whenever you want, and you've got all the money in the world to get whatever you want, and people in the world are just pissing you off because you can't go anywhere without paparazzi and people screaming at you. I can kind of see how people fall into it. No one's supposed to live that way. It's a bizarre way for people to live. Still, that's it's an interesting one. Who should have been on the list that wasn't? I think what's Amy Winehouse's ex-boyfriend, Pete Doherty. He possibly should have been on there. There's a million of them. It's a story as old as time. Rockstar gets addicted to drugs. Wasp. I like a bit of Wasp, and a lot of their songs are about that side of the industry. Interesting. Let me know who you think should have been on the list. Make sure you like and subscribe. It does mean the absolute world to me. If you really want to support me, head over to Patreon, but just watching and subscribing is enough for me. It really is. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers, guys.